Dugout Dad's local sports podcast, where our skills are questionable.
But our spirit is unstoppable.
I'm your host, Michael Hughes, with my co-host.
Jonathan Parker.
And guys, we want to welcome you back to Dugout Dads. We took off last week due to full fall break, and gave the coaches a little break to have time off with their families, and we took a little time ourselves. And well, glad to be back. Glad to be talking local sports again. And Jonathan got a lot of stuff to talk about this week.
I was going to say, man, what an exciting couple of weeks, and I mean, coaches firings. We've got our local sports teams, from our volleyball team playing in state championships to our ladies soccer team is going to be playing for a state championship also. So, and then of course, football is full fledged, and we got a lot of good action going on right now.
We do. And we always want to start each show with thanking our sponsors, right? We want to start with our title sponsor, which is Kobe McKinney with Underwood Realty. So for any of your realty needs, go see Kobe McKinney.
Of course, hashtag Hollies and Be the Gift for sponsoring our Player of the Week segment. Go see hashtag Hollies and get all the needs there that you need.
And then Infinity Promotions for our apparel, our backdrops, and our tablecloth you guys see, and actually some of our apparel we've done. So go see Infinity Promotions for any of your apparel, any of your school needs or anything like that. You need any kind of embroidery, they can do all that stuff for you.
And our final sponsors, our newest sponsor, as a coach's segment, is Anthony Hackett with Farm Bureau Insurance. Anthony is an agent out of Lafayette, Macon County. If you've got any insurance needs, Anthony can fill all of those for you, and he's a great individual to do that.
Yep. So, Jonathan, like I said, we had a big week of sports this week here in the county. Our volleyball team almost runs the table and sweeps the first two games there at the state, and then gets into the championship, and then goes against a pretty tough Eagleville team there to lose that, but finished state runner-up in volleyball, first time ever for those girls there. And then you mentioned our soccer team. And I talked to Coach Nick Bassell about our soccer team not long ago. Asking him, hey, finally get over that hump and win that region championship and go to the state, and he did that this week.
Absolutely. Kudos to the lady volleyball team, Coach Brian Leslie and that group. I went over and watched them play in the district against Smith County, and man, they've got some big tall girls that can play some volleyball. And I look forward. We're going to try to get Coach Leslie on in the next couple of weeks, get him to discuss that, and maybe have some of his all region and all district players on to have him and have them discuss how their season went. And then again, soccer, I believe it kicks off. Is it
soccer plays Tuesday?
Tuesday.
They play Tuesday. Yep. Tuesday morning they play Westview.
So, kudos to them. It's an exciting time. Never been there, never done it before. So, again, it just kudos to our coaches and kudos to our local athletes, just taking that next step forward, like we've talked about numerous times, in getting Tennessee and Smith County on the map and going to compete and play for state championships.
Yeah, and then we move back into our local football action. Gornsville, once again, the train's still rolling down the tracks. Now they're sitting at 9-0. Red Bone Springs comes into town. Really not much of a matchup. And looking at it, I watched Gornsville play that night. They kept it kind of vanilla. You can see that. Even the announcer said Red Bone Springs had 8th graders playing too, right? So right. You said Gornsville kind of scaled back a little bit. You saw a lot of people get in the game for Gornsville, which is pretty good on those games. A few 8th graders got to play Thursday night for the Tigers as well, and they come out 9-0 with a 42-0 win there at Red Rolling.
Right, and they're wanting to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing, and getting experience, even against Red Bowling or whoever. That's unprecedented, and to get that is only going to gain confidence for those kids moving forward.
It is. Then you look at Smith County, who has a nail biter down in Telecom Plains, and Smith County's leading there all the way to the end, and Teleco has a great drive there at the end, converted a couple of big pass plays to get down into the red zone scoring area, and then gets a touchdown pass with 8 seconds to go to win the game.
Yeah, tough one to take on the chin. A lot of learning experience there. You got to be able to finish those and close those games out. At the very end, Smith County led up until the last few seconds there. They're still fighting. They're still battling. They're still, they're in the playoffs. Let's talk about the positives. They're going to be in the playoffs, and they just got to find ways to close out ball games. And that's the one thing on a young team that you have to learn and have to grow and get done.
Yeah, and then you look Basketball's cranked right around the corner. Middle school basketball is now started for all the teams here in the county. We'll start our middle school basketball coaches series probably next week. Have a couple coaches on for that. It's that time of the year now. Once again, Jonathan, we talked about where multiple things are going on. You got soccer, you had volleyball. Now you throw basketball into the mix. A lot of busy time going around here in the fall.
Well, and I was talking to my son Maddox earlier today, and I was like, how quickly the high school and college football season is. I mean, we're down in college. We've got 4 games left.
Yep.
High school, we got 1 game left before the playoffs kick off, and it's just amazing to me at how quickly we rush to get it going, and then it's like snap of the finger and it's over.
It's funny that you say that because we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, where it felt like just yesterday we was previewing our jamboree, right? We was previewing the jamboree at Smith County High School with all the teams coming in, and now here we are, week 11 of high school football. You're right, 1 week left of the regular season, and then we roll over to the playoffs. It goes so fast, right? And you talk about it to the seniors, especially how fast it does go.
Yeah, absolutely. And even as a freshman, Maddox as a freshman this year, and he's told me, he's like, I can't get over how quickly this semester is going. You come off a fall break, and then of course in a couple of weeks we've got Thanksgiving, a couple of 3 weeks we got Thanksgiving, and then you got the Christmas break, and they're going to have basketball kicking off pretty soon, and then as well as I do, right as soon as the first of the year turns around, it's baseball season. So it's fun times, but quick fun times.
Yep. So let's jump into and talk about our beat the dads pick'em segment that we didn't get to talk about last week because we took a week off. Last week's winner was Brown and Maggart. Brown, yours last week's winner. We'll get you a $20 gift card to Amazon there. I'll put in the final standings later on this week. You'll see them in there. And just for anybody that's listening, goes back and listens to the show, this will be the final week. It's your chance to get in to the Dugout Dads Pick'em and win the $20, but also get entered into that $100 gift card in week. I guess it'd be week 12 of high school football. We'll do it week 1 of the playoffs.
Yeah, and so this will be week 8 of when we started this. So there's only 8 winners. So your chances of winning $100 is pretty good.
Yeah. So this week, here in the Hughes household, I got to tell my wife, unfortunately, that she won. She goes 10-0 this week, and actually she wins. She's right here beside me, by the way. She actually wins this week, so we had to tell her, but she's not getting the $20 Amazon gift card for me. But she wins.
I've got to pony that up, right?
Yeah, she goes 10-0, and she won this week. But I tell you what's funny is we had quite a few 10-0s this week. JP, you went 10-0 this week. You won the actual pick 'em when it comes to the guys who actually pick every week. I went 9-1, and Matt, the great Inyard, is that what he had?
I think that's what he put in there.
Greatest Inyard won, and he went 9-1 this week as well. Now, when it comes to Coach Shaw, went 8-2. Coach Gammons went 8-2 as well. Our guest picker this week was Carson Hackett. Carson, you went 7-3 this week. But what the best thing about your pick, Carson, is what you put in the comments.
I'm always interested to read Carson's, he doesn't put a score for the Titans game. And this week it was, do y'all just do the points because the Titans are going to lose. So it's, I always look forward to seeing Carson's response in that, in the point total for the week.
And once again, the Titans did lose this week. So Carson, yes, you are correct.
Losing.
We are losing. We don't put the pick of the Titans game because we just don't want it to be an L every week. So we make it a little bit interesting, right? How many points do the Titans give up? Basically, is what they're doing.
Right.
But congratulations to my wife, I guess, for winning this week. But thanks
for close every week, just about.
Yeah. But thank you to everybody started this, 8 weeks ago, and it was something that Jonathan had a great idea. It was something it was in the Carthage Courier. If you lived around here and you're in your 40s or older, you probably remember that inside the paper every week they did the Pick'em contest. And it's something that we decided we wanted to do, and we'll continue to do. We'll start it earlier next week or next year. We'll go from week 1 all the way through week 10. But we do appreciate everybody that's picked this week. We've had a lot of participation. We've upped our participation every week, but this is the last week. We're going to put it out there. We want about 100 entries in there. If we can get 100 entries, we'll be set. That's what we're gunning for, 100 entries this week. We're going to post it out there, share it, put your entries, get your family to do it. My family has a contest every week to see who wins. Um, this week, and once again, unfortunately, it was I say unfortunately because she beat me, but Bridget won in the family. But we look forward to this every single week.
Absolutely. It's just something fun that I had a brain just thought that, hey, let's do something fun and kind of make it exciting, trying to draw attention to us and just make it fun for everybody.
So, Jonathan, we'll move over and we'll talk about Smith County football just for a couple minutes here, and we may not go the full hour tonight, but we'll talk about Smith County football. And once again, we talked about Coach Dyer about not shooting themselves in the foot, and once again they shoot themselves in the foot. You go down, and it looks like when I was watching the game, Smith County is driving. We're on Tellico Plains, about 35-yard line, 4th and 3, right? Once again, you convert that first down, you probably win the ball game. Well, you get stopped, and then Telecom has about 4 good plays down the field, and they go win the game. So you look at that, and then penalties. Penalties were a little better this week. We only had 5 penalties, but that's for 65 yards. So we had the penalties that really mattered. Yeah, when you look at it, you look at Riley Martin, who's still injured, not playing this week. Landon Blevins comes in for the last 2 weeks. We didn't talk about him last time, but played really good at the quarterback position for just coming in for relief of Riley and leads the team with 117 yards rushing this week.
Well, and I'm gonna piggyback to the Moore County game a little bit, and Landon came in, filled the void really well for Riley, was real decisive. I thought he looked good at the quarterback position, was making great decisions, had a lot of good runs against Moore County. And Moore County came in at a pretty solid ball club, and Blev come in there and really took the reins of the quarterback position and led Smith County to a big victory over Moore County and much needed. And, you look at this week, he had 117 yards on the ground, 6 of 13 through the air. So, he did his job.
He did do his job, right? And you can't ask for much more than that for somebody that comes in that's not traditionally a quarterback, and you lose Riley, which is a big part of your offense, right? Riley's, he was probably 60% of their offense this year. You lose him, but then Landon comes in and does a tremendous job. So kudos to Coach Reed and the offensive staff and Coach Dyer, who got Landon ready and is actually kind of taking the helm there. And we don't know when Riley will be back. He may be back this week. We don't really know yet. But going into that Gornsville matchup, you got something else that you got to prepare for now.
Absolutely. And I'm sure the Gornsville coaches are working on that, because I'm not sure of the Riley, if he's going to be able to play this coming Thursday. But again, to me, Blevins brings another aspect of the offense. He's a little quick. When he gets out in open space, he's got some moves.
Yeah, he does got some moves, and he's pretty dynamic. And I was wondering when you come in from Moore County, Riley throws a pretty good ball. Riley's a pretty good passing quarterback. And you look, Landon's not bad. He threw the ball very well too, but I think his legs is what really makes him a dynamic player.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you turn the page, we'll go back to our player of the week for Moore County. And we're going to go ahead and give it to Landon Blevins for his, coming in at the spot. Moore County had not seen that. You come in with an injured quarterback, you don't really know what to expect. And he comes in and has an outstanding game and leads Smith County to the victory there.
Yep. And, and you look at next week now, we always wanted next week to be the region championship matchup. Well, it's not going to be that. But, Smith County still got to right a couple of things going into Gornsville week to get right for the playoffs, right? This is, once again, a region game, your final region game. You need a little bit of help, but you also help yourself. If you go in, you can win that game. And I'm sure Coach Dyer and his staff will be talking about that. But, you get a little help there, and you can finish the number 2 seed in Region 4A.
Absolutely. That's going to be the goal. The number 1 seed is relatively out of the question. But you can still take care of business and get that 2 seed and get that home playoff game that you really need. And looking at it, I just looked at the TSSAA website, and we do play that Region 4, 2A does play Region 3, and that consists of York, and Bledsoe County, and I think Grundy County, and I can't think of the other, Marion County. They're the 1 seed. So that will be the 4 coming out of that. I don't think there's an incident where those 4 flip-flopped anywhere in there. So that will be the matchups for our region there. It's Region 3.
Yeah, like I said, I know Coach Dyer and his guys, they're going to work hard this week. They're coming off a week off the previous week, then come back and play, go to Telego Plains down there, and, a pretty good road trip there for those guys. But come back now you're focused on Gornsville week. And what I really am interested in, and we'll talk more about the Gornsville side in a few minutes, but is how do you prepare for Gornsville week 10, compared to week 1?
Yes.
And Coach Dyer couldn't be with us tonight. He had a family church event tonight, so Coach Dyer couldn't be with us tonight. And we'll talk to him maybe later in the week and see if we can have a conversation with him about it. But I wonder what the mindset is when now you play Gornsville week 10 versus week 1.
Well, and Michael, I can't remember the last time this game was played. There's been a couple of instances as to where it's been maybe the second game, maybe the third game, but now you've got tape of a whole season. And I can't remember maybe I'm just not thinking right, but I can't remember when this game has been played so late in the season. And, there's a lot of things, expect the unexpected the first couple of weeks. You never know, and then of course the injury bug may bite you, but now you've got a full season of tape. And it's hard to really implement a lot of new things now. And I'm sure both coaches are going to have different nuances of different things that they're going to try to do. But absolutely, I'd like to talk to Coach Dyer, and I'd love to talk to Coach Jackson as well. At what magnitude at this game at the end of the season, what does it mean now?
Yeah, and you look at the implication. There's never really implications anyway, right? Gornsville's number 1. They're going to be number 1. They're going to finish 1 in the region, but it's something for Smith County going into this game to right the ship going into playoff week. If you happen to come in and you got to go to Gornsville, which is going to be a hostile environment, regardless if it's 15 miles or not, it's going to be a hostile environment when you go over there. The crowd's going to be crazy. But you look at, does Smith County come in, and if you can somehow right the ship and beat the Tigers, what motivation does that give you going in, momentum going into week 1 of the playoffs?
Well, it just absolutely gives you all the momentum in the world. And that's the thing. And that's going into the playoffs. That's what you want. And, it's going to be an electric atmosphere. I mean, it's a big time rivalry. And as well as I do, with rivalry games, it doesn't matter if it's Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Alabama, Gordonsville, Trousdale County, Smith County, Gornsville. You throw the record out the window, and good and well, these coaches are going to throw the playbook at these players this coming Thursday.
Yeah, and you look at, going back to the Smith County and the Telco Plains game, I don't know the injury bug. I don't know if anybody got hurt in the Telco Plains game or not. But Gornsville, you look at and just see them, they get a few guys back, right? Jamario Williams is back he's playing again. You get a couple more guys healthy. We're hoping that Riley's healthy, right? So it's mono a mono, right? It's 100% versus 100%, and that's what you want in these kind of games.
Absolutely, you want your best on best. And I know these kids, even if they're injured a little bit, they're going to wake up Thursday morning, they're going to be ready to play, and they're going to be ready to go over there in the jungle and hit each other in the mouth.
And Jonathan, if you want to go ahead and give our player of the week for Telco Plains for Smith County, go right ahead.
So our player of the week for Telco is Ben Howe. Ben has defensively, Ben is like number 1 or number 2 in the region in tackles, and he's just been all over the place defensively. Had a good game offensively, led the team in receiving yards. So congratulations to Ben on being our player of the week against Telco.
Yeah, and if you watch Ben, how he's progressed, from last year to this year, he's really one of their standout defensive players.
And you look at Ben, and Ben is kind of a leader. Mm-hmm. You can just see his leadership qualities when he's on the football field.
You can, and I love to watch him play, because you can tell he loves football.
Mm-hmm.
He loves football, and the way he plays and presents himself on the field, he is everywhere, right? He's playing kind of like that up back for him, the H-back position, a little sniffer back on offense. But on defense, is really like you said. I think he was 4th in the state in the region, in Region 2A, and number 1 in 4A as far as tackles goes. And that was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Or 2 days.
Yeah. But, and not only does he love football, but you can tell he loves his teammates. And sometimes I've seen Ben get in the face of some of his players, and you have to do that sometimes as a leader, to get kids in the right spot. Maybe they're not playing their hardest. And kudos to Ben for that as well, because that's something that that this team, really needs moving forward from not this season, but next season as well.
And before we swap over, talk about the Gornsville and Red Bowling game, we got to say kudos to, we talked about Riley Martin, but kudos to Riley Martin for committing to Alabama this
Yes.
past week, going to Alabama to play baseball. Hey, we can't, stress. We talked about this enough about these players in our community going D1, right? And now you're going to play big boy SEC baseball. So kudos to Riley. Congratulations to Jason and Kelly and the family. Got to be pretty excited.
Yes, and I look forward to having Riley on to talk about his recruitment process down there. And I did the math on it the other day. There's 16 teams in the SEC. There's 34 baseball scholarships. So that's 540-ish players. That he's one of the top 540 players in the Southeast region, or in the really the USA, because they're a national program. And going there is, I know Jason and Kelly, Ty, Eli, have to be super excited to see him play at the D1 level, and I am too. I'm anxious to see these next 2 years with Riley, playing for Smith County, and to see what he can produce here locally as well.
Yep. So congratulations, Riley. Congratulations for that commitment, and good luck to you, man. It'll be the only time that I'll ever say roll tide is when you're on the mound for those guys. Moving over to the maybe correct. Yeah. Moving over to the Gornsville side, as we talked about, Red Bowling Springs comes in. I really down Red Bowling Springs team when I was watching it. They had 19 players on the sideline, right? So a really, really small group. And you could tell that Gornsville really played vanilla. They've done a little basic stuff, but still come up with a 42-0 win. Once again, it's kind of like, you think about Gornsville, I went to school there and I played there. Red Bowling Springs is always a staple on the schedule, right? It's not a region game anymore. It's nothing means to it, but having Red Bowling Springs is just something they have every single year.
Right. And it's, I hate to call it a get right game, but let's face it. I mean, Red Bowling has always been kind of, they're very small school. They're never going to produce the numbers. It's really going to be able to compete, at the levels that, we're going to be able to, but again, it's on the schedule. Again, you try to just walk through that game and not get anybody hurt. But it's a great time to get, freshmen, sophomores, more experience, and experience is going to be needed for this season and next.
Yeah, and you look at that, and you look at the stat line for there. There's not a lot of stats, right? Gornsville only has 272 on offense, which you think against a Red Bowling Springs team, you probably have a lot more than that, right? But you look at they have a kickoff return for a touchdown, and then the defense really holds them to 0 yards passing, only 108 yards rushing on the ground. So Gornsville, like I said, you see a lot of players get in the game, and then look at it. Jamario Williams comes back, and then Casey Stennett has a few carries. Ryder Roberts carries the ball a couple of times. Anthony Fuller, who's been he was injured the first 8 weeks of the season, is now back, carried the ball a few times. Caden Potter, who's an 8th grader, comes in and gets a carry. So you get these games, and you're right, it's a get right game. You get your guys. It almost feels like Gornsville had 2 bye weeks in a row, right? I mean, right. Red Bowling Springs, they played. The starters probably didn't play a whole lot if I had my guess. But then you have Christian Hawkins, who comes in and leads them in receiving, 2 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown.
And for me, looking at this, it's a stat filler. You don't just see 1 or 2 players. It's 5, it's 6, it's 7, it's 8 players that you're putting in the stat sheet. And those games, sometimes you can get lackadaisical. You can, but you look at it, they didn't turn the ball over. They have very few penalties. Sometimes in those games you can't get up for, and you kind of just go through the motions, and you're lazy, and you hold, or you make a dumb penalty, or have a couple of dumb turnovers. But they didn't do that. They had 272 yards of total offense. It only gave up 108. And then you look, for me, my eyes flowed to the passing yards. They didn't give up a passing yard.
Not one single pass yard. Now, that's not to say I don't know if Red Bowling tried to throw the ball or not, because I didn't get to watch the whole game. But
yeah, but I mean, it says 0 for 0. So, but again, it doesn't matter. I mean, you would think in a 4-quarter football game that they might have attempted a pass, but they didn't. And I believe in the Westmoreland game, They gave up only very few
Very few.
yards, passing as well.
Mark Sampson, you're right. He made a comment on our thing here. Coach Stanley Wills always said, if you want to be remembered, you get beat by Red Bull Springs, right? So they don't have to be remembered because they beat Red Bull Springs
Yes.
pretty good there. But now you talk about it for them as well. So Smith County coming over, it's going to be a lot of high intensity going on there. Level heads will be out the door. So you got to keep your cool. You want to leave this game injury free as well. But I also wonder how Coach Jackson goes in to prepare. Because you're 9-0 right now. You want to go 10-0. The whole community. That's all they're talking about, right? Let's go 10-0, 10-0. You can't wait. 1-0 in the week puts them 10-0 in the season. But Smith County can be a little dangerous sometimes coming in. They show flashes where they can be dangerous. But on the flip side, Gordonsville's defense to me has really, really stood out this year, right? Because I felt like going into the preseason, I felt like they might have had a little drop off. They graduated a ton of players. A lot of the defensive front and offensive front, graduated out. But they've really not missed a beat.
No, they have not, and it's a well-oiled machine. And to piggyback off of what you said, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the last 2 state championships that Gordonsville has won, the only team that they have gotten beat by is Smith County.
It could be. I'm not 100% positive, but it could be.
Yeah. So, you throw the records out, and the guys out there can correct me if I'm wrong on that. If I'm wrong, I apologize for that. But I believe I'm almost positive the last one they won that we were the only, or Smith County was the only one that beat them that year. And so again, you just throw the records out the window, and both sides they love each other 364 days a year. And the one time is when either Gordonsville comes to the hole or Smith County goes over to the jungle, and they don't get along that night. But it's going to be an electric atmosphere. It's going to be one of those games where you lock the doors and everybody's going to be there.
And you want it to be, because everybody has ways to watch the football game, right? I'm gonna say this out there to the community: go over there and watch that game. And Mark will tell you, I know he's watching us tonight too. We always talk about when we played this. You remember this, right? But I remember as a senior, man, that the fences were lined up. We played Smith County at home my senior year there, and there was no standing room. I mean, it was standing room only, right? Around the fences, all the bleachers were full. But now you do have multiple ways to watch a football game, right? You can sit here in your living room and watch it live streamed and not go, but go over there and get in that atmosphere. It'll be a pretty electric night.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun night, regardless of the outcome. Both teams are going to go to the playoffs. And what's funny about that is you look down the road, and if everything trended the right way, they could possibly play again. And at the stakes would be even higher then. And, that's going to happen at some point in time where, these two teams are going to be good and solid. And it may happen this year to where we get and have to play them, both teams play again. And that would be even more so electric.
Right now, that here, regardless of what you've done so far, right, you want to get to the playoffs. In this game, your Week 10 game kind of catapults you into what your first round playoff game will probably be, right? Yes. So you want to come out of this game, win or lose, whoever wins or loses, you want to come out of this game gearing up, right? You want to trend up here, because here's where you want to play your best football, right? You might have struggled throughout Week 1 through Week 9, but here's where you've got to start. That trend has got to go up if you want to make a deep run to the playoffs.
Well, and regular season is one thing. But and all coaches talk about it. It doesn't matter if it's high school, college, pro. It's all about going 1-0. Well, when that calendar turns over next week, you absolutely have to go 1-0, or you're going home.
Yep. So we're sitting here, and we're looking at, and kudos. So this week against Red Bull Springs, our player of the week this week will be Brooks Stafford. Brooks Stafford had a good game. He had a long kickoff return for a touchdown, and then he had a touchdown catch, if I'm not mistaken, right, Jonathan? Had a reception for a touchdown. So yes, this week's Gordonsville player of the week versus Red Bull Springs, Brooks Stafford. Brooks will come over and we'll see you one day this week, get you your shirt. And then for Ben Howe, we'll come see you as well and get your shirt as well. So, here's where we usually go in and talk about next week's matchup. Well, we already have, right? So we've already talked about Smith County versus Gornsville over at Gornsville this week. Looking forward to seeing how this game goes.
And don't sell Brooksy short, because Brooksy also had a 78-yard kickoff return. So he had 2 touchdowns this past week. And, you and I both have coached Brooksy. Great kid, and got a lot of speed, and it's going to be a problem in the next couple of years, because he's only going to gain a little more strength, a little bit more quickness in him. And if he gets any quicker, he's definitely going to be hard to handle.
Well, I look forward to next Sunday night too, and talking about this matchup after Friday night to see. Yes. And talk about, you hope it's a good game. You really hope it's a good game. You want it to be where both teams, really play a really hard fought game. And in these games, it could be an 8-6 game. It could be a 48-8 game. You just don't really know.
You never know. So again, it's going to be electric this coming Thursday night. Look forward to seeing everybody there, because I'm going to be there.
So transitioning, Jonathan, let's transition to our college level here for a little bit. Let's talk about UT. We're big UT fans. We'll talk about Vanderbilt in a few minutes too. Their best ranking since 1937 or whatever. We'll get to that junk in just a little bit. But talking about UT, they come in, and we didn't get to talk about last week. They go down to Alabama and they lose. They lose to Alabama. With chances to beat Alabama, right? I mean, you go down and you really have chances. You look at it, and I know everybody that's watched that game. The pick six at the end of the half kind of derails you from where you was going, right? You can go in, if you run that ball and you score, or even if you throw it and you score, you go in 16-14. Well, you come out in the second half, and you stop Alabama, and then you score. Well, you're leading that game, but then it flips, and now you still got to play from behind. And Tennessee just didn't have the firepower to catch back up.
No, and I'm glad that we kind of had that last week where we weren't here, because it's a tale of 2 games for me. Yeah. That last week, and I know that the defense has probably dictated a lot of the coverages and everything with Alabama. And look, Alabama's got much more talent than Kentucky has. But to me, Tennessee did not try to push the ball down the field against Alabama. Their passes of over 20 yards, they didn't have any. And then you turn around and look last night, at one point in time, Joey was 6 of 6 on passes of 20 and plus yards.
Yeah.
So, and again, you did have the pick six that just kind of derailed the whole game. And for me, I was afraid that Joey was going to get traveling down there, his first real true test on the road. And in that top game, again, it's a rivalry game. It's to bring the cigars out and let's smoke them. And just was head scratching. And then again, the secondary is an issue right now. It doesn't matter who we play right now. It seems like that everybody's running wide open in the secondary.
It is. And, but what I really noticed, and we was talking about last night when we watched the Kentucky game, and you really saw it in the Alabama game too, is our third down defense is really bad right now. Yes. We're third, and they can be 3rd and 12, 3rd and 14, and they're still picking those up. Until you correct that, you will not make a deep run into the college football playoff. Now, they did give Tennessee a chance. If they can win out, they got a 90% chance to make the college football playoff. Now, here's what you got to do. You got Oklahoma coming to town this week. You got New Mexico the week after that at home, but then you go to Florida, right? You go to the Swamp, and then you got Vanderbilt to finish out the year in Knoxville. And Vanderbilt definitely not a slouch, right? No. And, what's funny is I showed this here, and Coach Ashley Smith from Union Heights, she's a Vanderbilt fan. She said, and I called him junk, and she gave us the eye roll emoji there. But you look at Tennessee, they do have offensively. I really think they got to put the pieces in place, right? I think they can do what they want to do offensively. If they don't fix the defense, I don't know how far you go.
That's exactly right. And I do think the last 4 games, I think they're going to be favored. And I think if you go in and handle business, both teams, and I'm saying Tennessee and Vanderbilt here, and this is crazy for me to say, but that November 29th game could possibly be a play-in game to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
And that is crazy. And you talk about, a rivalry game adding something to it. The good thing is that it is in Knoxville, but that could possibly, if everything trends like it should, and the schedules are going to dictate that.
Yeah.
But that game could be a college football playoff play-in game per
And,
se.
and just think about this, and I can't remember. I think in 2006 when Cutler was there at Vanderbilt, the last time that Vandy was favored to beat Tennessee, and they might have been favored last year to beat Tennessee, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But you look at Vanderbilt, who's now number 9 in the nation. You're right. That game, especially if they both win out, right? If they win out or one of them loses one more game, that could be a play-in game to that college football playoff. And you look at Vanderbilt now, I think they've only lost one SEC game where Tennessee's lost 2.
Yes.
So that could really be for Tennessee if they both keep, trending and keep winning, where it's a really do or die game for Tennessee, where it may not hurt Vanderbilt as bad if they lose because they still only have 2 losses if they win out.
Right.
But
for me, I guess I want to have a little pump the brake moment with Diego Pavia and all the Heisman talk. And let's be honest. I mean, he had a pedestrian 129 yards passing yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think the narrative gets promoted way too much that this kid is the quote unquote best player in college football. When you go up against the likes of Ty Simpson and Dante Moore and even Joey Aguilar has much better numbers than Diego Pavia has. It's the darling of the year. And again, do I think that Vanderbilt is going to come into that Tennessee game with 1 loss? I don't. I think that they're going to come up. They play Texas this week.
Yeah.
I really think they're going to. If they get to that Tennessee game with 1 loss, they're going to have they're going to earn it for sure.
Yeah, they get to Tennessee with 1 loss. They're probably even with the Tennessee loss, they're looking at possibly an SEC championship game, or possibly you're right into the playoff without having to play an SEC championship game. And
yes,
who would ever thought in a million years we'd ever be talking about Vanderbilt football with a chance to 1, play an SEC championship game, and 2, get into the college football playoff.
And no, I cannot fathom that at all. And again, and I'm going to give praise here. Clark Lee has done an outstanding job with that program. Defensive minded coach that, you look across the college football spectrum, and there are a lot of teams out there right now, a lot of top tier programs would love to say Clark Lee is their head football coach.
Yeah. And, staying with the Tennessee athletic theme just for a couple minutes, you look at Tennessee basketball is playing Duke right now on ESPN2 for the preseason matchup, which is pretty big. You don't see many preseason matchups actually getting televised by ESPN. No. But probably the biggest news to come out of Knoxville, even bigger than Nico Iamaleava leaving last year, is Tony Vitello jumping ship, going to the San Francisco Giants. And I say jumping ship, that's what you coach for, right? You probably every coach's dream is to coach in the Major League Baseball, and Tony Vitello takes the job with the Giants. But Jonathan, what I like the most is me personally promoting Jason Elander to the head coach. Is I don't know if you lose much because they say Elander was the guy who done the most recruiting for the team anyway. But I just wonder if you don't lose much keeping Elander. He's a Vitello product anyway, so I would assume you see a lot of the same stuff.
And, there were a lot of reports out there, and you can hear anything and everything about the relationship between Danny White and, Tony V was not that great. I hope that wasn't the case. And Tony V really had a professional when he spoke finally, he said he was open. He wanted to leave the door open. I don't know that his quote unquote coaching type is something that, it's never been done before. It's never, a college coach has never jumped to the major leagues. He doesn't have it.
Minors first.
Right. And he doesn't have a lot of, to my knowledge, any professional, coaching experience whatsoever. So, kudos to him for taking that jump. You look at Jimmy Johnson, he done it with the Dallas Cowboys. Barry Switzer done it with the Cowboys. There's not been many coaches that have made that jump, and on the negative side, you look at Nick Saban. Nick Saban won numerous national championships, goes to Miami and can't do it. So it's a different. You're dealing with a different player. You're dealing with a different type player. It's totally different. But again, him saying that he's open to coming back, he hopes that Tennessee will welcome him back. But again, I think Josh Elander was the the choice, and I'm really glad that they went ahead and took that interim off of him, because it sounds like from everything that I've read, there's been a lot of different players that stood out that have backed
Yeah.
him, and a lot of players that like Christian Moore, recent players that really he was the one that needed the job.
But I tell you what, I give kudos to Danny White for, and my wife actually showed me this is he took the leadership committee of the baseball team and they talked to them individually. Who do you want? What are you looking for? He took the recommendation of the players on that team, and it looked like they was all in favor of Jason Elander.
Yes.
Which is great.
Absolutely, and I'm excited. I mean, again, it's not going to be Tony Valls anymore. He's a national treasure in my book from what he turned Tennessee baseball. And again, I talked to several different ones. I mean, you look at it. Link Jarrett got a extension at Florida State, and good and well that Tennessee reached out to different ones, and that these ads have a coaching list because they
Oh,
know that at any point in time their coach can leave. But those are the top coaches, your Jay Johnsons at LSU, that Tennessee was looking to bring in, of course, because now they're a dominant national program.
yep, you're right. And I'm looking forward to seeing Elander baseball next year just to see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel to see that drop off. And you look at Tennessee's recruiting class is one of the number ones I think he might have been number one in the nation right now as far as the 2026 class. I don't. And if Elander's actually your recruiter, then you don't drop off, right? You don't lose much.
No. Well, and from what I have read and on paper, if they can keep the 20, I think it's the 26 and 27 class together, it has potential to be one of the greatest two classes ever in the history of college baseball.
That'd be amazing. Honestly, it'd be just amazing.
Yeah.
But looking a little more college, go back to the college football realm, looking about a little few of the games. As you say, Vanderbilt, Missouri, has a really good game this weekend. Missouri guy lands on the 1 yard line there on the Hail Mary at the end, but Vanderbilt squeaks out another win. They've done that a couple times this year when they get into SEC play. But things on West End are really game day was in town. I don't know if I ever remember game day coming to Nashville. They may have not.
2008. It was last time.
2008.
Last time it was
Okay.
there. Mm-hmm.
I mean, game day, it's been 13 years since game day's been on campus. Game day was there. The atmosphere was good. Vanderbilt Stadium looks pretty nice now. They got the construction done. It looks pretty good. But Pavia Mania is running wild, and I can't wait till he comes to Neyland and we shut that up.
I'm right there with you. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut on that, and hopefully, Joshua Josephs and Jordan Ross and a couple of those other Boo Carter, get to Pavia a few times and let him know, hey, there's still business to be handled.
Yeah, and you look at a little more teams in the SEC. Georgia was off this week, so they didn't play anybody. But Texas once again, Texas struggles to win again this week. And the Arch Manning, the Arch Manning comparisons to Peyton and Eli and Archie and all this stuff. You look at it's not really panning out for him. I really think the pressure got to Arch this year. He has played better the last few games, but he's not at the I'm the Heisman Trophy winner this year that everybody pegged him to be.
Right.
But Texas is winning too, and now they come to Vanderbilt, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Vanderbilt goes to Texas.
But yes. Now you look at Arch Manning versus Diego Pavia. Let's see who the true quarterback is this week.
Right. And I'm anxious to see that game this coming Saturday, and to see how Vanderbilt responds. Again, it's not just on Arch. His running game has been very much a struggle, which makes you one dimensional, which teams don't have to plot as much against. They can focus more in on your passing ability. But Arch has struggled all season. But again, I think Vanderbilt going on the road down there, they're going to have to bring it this coming Saturday. And
Tennessee gets back to Neyland this week. They got Oklahoma coming to town, a night game. You've always said, Baker Mayfield said it many years ago, there's no place louder he's ever played than Neyland Stadium. And I'm sure Neyland Stadium will be rocking come Saturday night at 6:30.
And you look at Tennessee's schedule. This game is going to be a very tough one. Oklahoma's got a great defense. I watched the Ole Miss Oklahoma game this past week. They can put up points. John Mateer is a very up and coming quarterback. But they're going to have a strong defense, and Brent Venables and his crew are going to have a really good game plan this coming Saturday in Knoxville.
I can't wait. I mean, look at Tennessee, the state of Tennessee football right now. You got Vanderbilt, who's number 9. You got Tennessee, who's at 14 this week, and they're both playing big time SEC matchup games this week. Man, there's no, and I'll say it over and over and over again. There's nothing better than college football. College football is the best sport in America today.
Well, and then you take a step out of the SEC. Memphis is 25th. They beat a really good South Florida team this past weekend. You look 30 minutes to the east of us. Tennessee Tech is 8-0 this season. They beat a very good SEMO team this past Saturday.
Team Tennessee Tech's had since the 1960s.
And then you got Maryville College. They won 44 and 30. They're 6-1 on their season. The state of football in Tennessee is very strong. And then, of course, you've got ETSU. You've got UT Chattanooga. You've got a lot of schools that are producing. And what you can see if you look at some of these other smaller schools roster, really, the one team that's really struggling is Middle Tennessee State right now. But you got a roster of kids that are from Tennessee. And that is the one thing that I have seen over you used to hear about the recruitment, the high school recruiting in Georgia and Florida and Texas. And while that was all great and wonderful, and sure, they still produce a top level talented player, but you're starting to see a lot of 5-star, 4-star kids coming out of the Middle Tennessee. You've always had in Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Memphis, but now you're starting to see that 5-star athlete in the Middle Tennessee area as well.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to this week in all sports for our community, our state. You got, like as we talked about, you got soccer who's playing in the state tournament come Tuesday, volleyball who just finished runner-up in the state tournament. High school football playoffs are starting in 2 weeks. Tennessee football and Vanderbilt football is on the upper echelon of teams in the national rankings. And man, we got so much to talk about, and I love being able to come on here and talk about sports every week.
Absolutely. And then you look at it, one thing we haven't touched on is the coaching fires that have happened since we've been off for 2 weeks. You had, James Franklin gets canned at Penn State. Billy Napier gets canned at Florida. You got the situation at Florida State with Mike Norvell. You've got
at Arkansas.
You got Brian Kelly at LSU, which I've seen reports that's turning sour quick. I never did understand the hire with Brian Kelly at LSU. And then, of course, Mark Stoops last night, when you pan around a stadium and you're in your home stadium and you're in the third quarter and all you see is orange, there's a problem there. But what's funny about that, and all of these coaches have these massive buyouts that just the best job in the world is a fired college football coach. Now, I don't care what anybody says.
Yep.
But what's funny in his contract, all these others, you can extend out. If you get fired, you can be paid. I think Franklin's is like 2041 or something like that. Within 3 months, Bob Stoops has got to be paid $40 million of his firing. Mark Stoops, not Bob. Mark Stoops has to be paid $40 million within 3 months of his firing. So kudos to his agent for that, because that's mind-boggling to me. Well, and these numbers are just crazy.
And I was listening to the 104.5 crew on radio the other day, and Ramon Foster said he was at a restaurant there in town in Kentucky getting ready to do the broadcast for Tennessee. And he was talking to some Kentucky fans, right? And they was talking about, are you excited about it? And they said, no, we're not excited. We're excited that Mark Stoops is fixing to get fired. We can't wait for this game to be over with where he can get fired. So they're ready for, you can see that Mark, he's kind of played out his welcome there. Yes. He's had some really good teams there. He gets to, he could never win the big game though, right? He had some teams that competed and got nationally ranked up in the, in the top 5. I think a couple of teams that he had to get in the top 5, but he could never contain that and constantly keep those guys up there. So it's time for a change, Kentucky.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, Mark Stoops is a really good football coach.
Yeah.
But at Kentucky, you're always going to be playing second fiddle to the basketball program. And that's the one thing for me. At what point, you look in their past, you've had Hal Mummy, you've had different ones at Kentucky that have been winners. And sometimes you have to be satisfied with what you have because where your NIL money is going, and it's going to the basketball program. And so again, but again, $40 million in 3 months, you're firing. I mean, where do I sign for this?
Where can I pick that? And just a quick update for Tennessee and Duke at the half. Tennessee does lead Duke 43-37 at the half.
Yeah.
Tennessee looks like they're playing pretty well. And Tennessee basketball may be pretty exciting this year with the Nate Met kid and some other guys they brought in. This could be Rick Barnes, one of his best teams.
Absolutely. I'm anxious to see this team play. Hopefully the injury bug doesn't bite them, but they've got some kids that Rick has went out in the transfer portal and got a couple of kids. It's what he's done the last few years, and so real excited. And the Amet kid is an incoming true freshman, but they say he's just dynamite.
So, Jonathan, once again, another great show. We'll talk about a little bit next week's show. We're going to have Matt Dyer come on once again. We're going to have Nick Basile come on and talk about his soccer, whether they win or lose. We're going to talk to Nick about his soccer season. We're going to try to get Coach Brian Leslie from the volleyball team to come on, and even try to get Coach Jackson to come on and preview, going into the playoffs. So next week, stay tuned for a great show we hope to have lined up for you guys. Our Beat the Dads Dugout Pick'em is the last week will be this week. If you want a chance to get entered into that $100 gift card, you got to win. But if you can't win unless you don't enter. So we're trying to get to 100 entries of our Beat the Dads Pick'em this week. So if you get in there, share it with your family. Share it with it on Facebook. We want to get to that 100 pick this week.
Absolutely, yeah. Share it. Let's get those pick'ems up to those numbers that we're looking for. And Michael, I'm looking forward to an exciting week of sports here locally, and really, really, really getting excited for playoff football in the next couple of weeks.
Yep, and we'll start, like I mentioned, we'll start our middle school basketball series. So middle school coaches, if you're watching, you go back and listen. We're going to be reaching out to you guys and have you guys come on like we did last year to highlight your middle school basketball teams. And then, excuse me, hopefully they have the high school basketball coaches come on once again and preview their season as well.
Yes, yeah, because that's about to kick off as well.
Yeah, it's right around the corner. Everything's fixing to fire up again. And we want to thank our sponsors once again. Kobe McKinney with Underwood Realty is our title sponsor. If you want any of your realty needs, go see Kobe McKinney over at Gornsville at Underwood Realty.
Go see #Hollies or be the gift for all of your needs that she has.
Infinity Promotions for your apparel, your backdrops, anything kind of promotional stuff you want, he can do those for you.
And Anthony Hackett with Farm Bureau Realty. Or Farm Bureau Insurance for all your insurance needs. He'll love that.
Yeah, he'll love that. So for the dads, for myself and Jonathan, where our skills are questionable,
but our spirit is unstoppable.
Until next time.